Yeah.
Welcome to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This is the place where you get both a coach's and sports dietitian perspective on topics important in endurance sports, including nutrition, training, and how these impact and fit into your daily life both on and off the race course. Your host, Coach Justin, certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian with a specialty in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins. Welcome, everyone. So this is episode number 6 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin, here with Coach Katie. Today's podcast is on meal planning and prep for athletes. So some of the stuff that we're going to discuss today in our episode is why meal planning and prep is so important, how it saves time and money, what happens when we don't plan, that age-old adage of, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so meal planning does not have to be perfect. It's all the stuff. There's all the stuff on Instagram and, all these other websites, in terms of finding recipes and quote unquote hacks for meal planning and prep. But why go to Instagram when we can go to our expert, Coach Katie, and she will walk us through some of her methods and strategies for planning meals for endurance athletes. So, Coach Katie,
Yeah,
welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good today, actually. After a lot of running the past 3 weeks in my preparation for my marathon, but I am feeling pretty good. I have a double threshold day today, which I'm sort of trying out, and then some rest days before I do a half marathon this Sunday. So I'm kind of still in the middle level, pretty large training block, but it's good. I was going to add too to that discussion you were talking about with the Instagram stuff. I feel like the biggest thing I wanted to mention there that when I put that in there was like, you go on Instagram and you see like people taking pictures of their like perfectly prepped meals that are like all in little containers for the week and everything's very prepped and planned out, and that's great. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I think people kind of when I say meal prep and planning, I think that's what they think of is like, oh, I've got to have every single meal in these perfectly, portioned containers, and everything has to be perfectly set out for the whole week, and it's got to be something like that, because you see that on social media, and that's not exactly, you don't have to feel we don't have that doesn't have to be what we have to do. Sorry, I've got a little like, it doesn't have to be perfect. So that's kind of what we're talking about today, because I think that holds people back a little bit. They're like, oh, I've got to do everything perfectly. It's got to look great. It's got to be perfectly portioned. And that's not the case. So yeah, I guess when we're starting out kind of in that first topic is like, why is meal planning and prep so important? And I kind of want to say that in terms of athletes, like why, like kind of in the perspective of like, why is it so important for an athlete or somebody that's very active to be doing meal prep and planning? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, like from your perspective, Justin, but yeah, what do you think? Like, why is it,
I
why
think,
do you
yeah, based on my past experiences, and this was, pre-working with you, um, I I tried meal planning and creating menus for a week. I really like the structure. I'm just that kind of like A-type personality where I like routine and I like structure. I like knowing what's for dinner, what's for breakfast, and what's for lunch. Either having it already prepared, so then you don't have the discussion constantly of like, oh, what am I going to have now for dinner? What's for dinner? When do I want to eat? How much of it do I want to eat? What's going to be, am I properly fueling for today's session as recovery, and then am I properly fueling for tomorrow's training session as well? I think that when I don't have a plan and I'm left to my own devices, I don't do well.
Mhm.
And I mean, clearly in my past experiences, I know that my performance has been hindered because of my lack of performance in the kitchen. And so this is something that I've been working really hard on over the past year as we've worked together, is the kitchen aspect of training. And meal prep to me takes some of the guesswork off the table, to speak, pun intended. I no longer have to not only am I trying to figure out what my training is going to be, but I know I have to figure out like what my meals are going to be. And if I've already made the decision a week in advance, say this is what I'm going to have, then it makes it easier on me. All I got to do is execute the plan. I don't have to come up with the plan and execute it all in the same time frame. So
Mhm.
I think it's helpful. It does take some getting used to and some practice to find out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Um, and yeah, getting away from the whole Instagram feed on, it only takes them, 30 seconds to make their prep meals and they look beautiful and they're proportioned correctly and they've got the right macronutrients. My meal prep has never, ever worked out for you come into my kitchen on a Sunday and you would think that it's like organized chaos. I have a really small house, so it's like if only one it only fits one person in the kitchen. With two people, you're gonna bump it into each other. So you just gotta find what I've learned is you have to find out what works for you. As with
Mhm.
the kitchen aspect is the exact same way. I like
Yeah.
the same meals, like, throughout the whole week. My breakfast, as you know, and you build my menus for me, my breakfasts are the same all week. My lunches, same all week. Dinner, same all week. And then when the weekends, we reset and we have a new menu. I like that structure. I thrive in that kind of structure. Some people can't do that, and they don't want to do that. They like the variety. I was like, "Oh, I hate leftovers." If you hate leftovers, then meal prep is going to be a challenging thing for you because it is effectively you're pre-cooking everything, and so everything is effectively leftovers. Because that's the whole idea. Unless you have some additional insight on how to like cater to those individuals that don't like leftovers,
Mhm.
and how those
Mhm.
people can effectively meal prep and set them up for success.
Right.
Uh,
And we'll talk we'll talk a little bit about that today. Sorry, I feel like I have a frog in my throat a little bit. I don't know if it's the allergy stuff, like the bunch of stuff going around in the air. Mm. But what I was gonna say is like, yeah, I think we'll talk about that a little bit because I know there are people that don't like having the same thing every day, and so others that don't mind having the same thing several days in a row, and so it does. That's gonna make it the way someone may meal prep may be different in those situations. So we'll kind of talk about how to navigate that a little bit towards the end when I talk a little bit more about bulk cooking and quick meals and things like that, some ideas around that. For me, I think the biggest problem I have with like those perfectly, those meals that are kind of perfectly prepped and portioned is that for me, like every day is a little bit different in terms of my training. So like I would almost have to plan each meal like in the portions differently every day. And so the way I do it is I kind of do have some bulk items in my fridge and I take things out and portion them daily depending on my activity level and put it on like a plate, and that's how I do it instead of having it all like pre-portioned. Because for an athlete, like you may not need that same exact portion every day. Like your portion of carbs may be different one day or over another. You may need to add some carbs to a meal just to get enough carbs or different types of protein options. So it's not going to be like that's that you need it portioned exactly the same. And I think that's the biggest thing to keep in mind. And I think the biggest thing too is like that I run into when I don't plan ahead is I often get to this point where I'm looking in the fridge, especially when I'm really active and I'm training a lot, and I don't have something like really ready that I can put together very quickly. And then I might not eat enough because I might just pick something that's easy because I don't have the time to like put something together that where I have to cook something and it's the middle of the day and I'm busy working or just got home from training, don't have a lot of time before my next appointment. And then I find like I'll get to the end of the day and I haven't had enough fuel. And that really impacts obviously my recovery and my ability to train, and my sleep is impacted because I don't sleep well if I'm underfueled. So to me, I think the biggest thing that's important about it is just having the food available to you when you need it, and having those things that you need, whether it's like protein or carbs and ready to go. So all you really have to do is kind of heat it up or just quickly do like a quick, maybe putting some stuff together, but you're not actually like making something. Because that's where I think the hindrance is like, if I don't think about it, if I'm just thinking about dinners, or but I'm not planning in my, like, what am I having for lunches, that's what really gets me, because I'm home working and I don't, if I don't have something, I don't, you think I'd be able to make something working from home, but I don't have the time sometimes. And then I'm just picking something easy or not eating enough. So, and as an athlete, that can be a really big problem. So I think that's why it's kind of important. And like you said, it's like if you don't plan ahead, then you get to the end of the day, like you're tired. You maybe did your full work day, you did your training, maybe you got up at 4 or 5 to do a run or a training session. By the time you get home at whatever, 5, 6, and especially if you have kids or something, you're just like exhausted. And if you have to plan like a full meal and you haven't even actually planned it at all, you have no idea what you're going to do, the likelihood you're going to go to the fast food or go eat out somewhere is probably pretty high, or order in if you have the ability to do that. And so, I mean, that's kind of costly. Obviously, the cost of eating out is going up. I mean, even fast food, but yeah, but then the quality, the nutrient quality of that is probably pretty poor. And if that's what you're doing, a lot of the time you're kind of like probably not doing yourselves any favor, instead, in terms of helping you recover optimally and fuel your best for exercise. So it's like if you don't happen to plan ahead, that's kind of what you run into, I think, because the last thing I want to do at the end of the day is be like, when I haven't even thought about it, is what am I going to have for dinner? It's like, oh, that's I don't even have the capacity to think about that. But if I've thought about it ahead and I have some things ready, that's a lot better, because I could just go ahead and do that. Um, yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts on that. I don't know if you have any other things to add, but I think it's kind of following along with what you're saying already. But yeah, any other thoughts on why or how it
Yeah,
helps
for
us?
me, yeah, for me, it is like the decision. There's one more thing that I have to try and figure out. What I'm going to do. Another one is just the time management. It is very common for me to have a morning training session, which is probably the longer of the sessions, and have multiple sessions a day. So I
Mhm.
could have my morning training session, and then I have an all day work. And then it's common to have an evening session as well, some nights of the week. It doesn't happen every night, but
Mhm.
some nights, I do split them up, to give my body a chance to recover, throughout the day, and to have another quality session in the evening. And then by the time I'm done with that session, it's fairly late. It could be upwards of like 7 to 8 o'clock. And so if I know that, oh, dinner's already made, it's already in the fridge, all I got to do is just go in there and just warm it up, then it's a lot less stress on me. And
Mhm.
is that if I can minimize stress, then I know that that has a direct impact on the quality of my training, because, you know, I'm not carrying those non-training stress, into the workout session. So and it just makes me, an overall better person to be around.
Yeah.
My wife will tell you, it's just like, I'm already kind of a challenging person, because I am like this A-type personality. And so, I own that. I'm fine with it. And apparently she is too. But if I can find ways to minimize my stress, then I'm all for it. That's not to mention the weeks that I share custody with my youngest son, who's in high school, that I don't live in his school zone. So I have transportation responsibilities and getting him to and from school, making sure that he's getting his homework done, you know, making his lunches and breakfast for school. You know, there's a lot that goes on, in the household, and being able to, carry right now I'm carrying about a 14 to 15 hour training load, between the strength training and the aerobic conditioning, that in conjunction with, everything else, there's a lot. And so that's why I think that endurance athletes, it says that it requires a master's degree in logistics, in planning, because it absolutely does, to be able to fit everything in a manageable way and not feel so overwhelmed all the time. So
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
having the stuff in the kitchen already prepped and ready to roll uh, works well for me. It may not
Right.
work for everybody, but it works for me.
Yeah, that works for me. I'm gonna pause this really quickly because I have I have a creature in here making a lot of noise. My lizard. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh wait, I'm just not ending it.
No, I
Sorry
couldn't hear it.
about that. I have a bearded dragon and he is quiet most of the time, but I let him run around and he's like running around and making all sorts of noise that I can hear, and I don't know if it's distracting, but sorry about that. But that's just life, I guess, when you're recording from home. I wish I had
Yeah.
a padded room I could record from. Maybe someday I'll invest in that. No. Um, yeah, I agree. I think like the biggest thing is just like that. Yeah, that decision fatigue. First of all, like by the time you get to the end of the day, you're just kind of like done, right? You don't want to have to make any more decisions or think about it. You just kind of want to relax. And that if that's like I've had days like that where I'm like done with the day and then I'm like, oh, I still got to make dinner. And I usually like to cook, but it's like, this is stressful. Now I've got to do this last thing and I'm like totally done. And it's like, that just adds a layer of stress to my day that I probably don't really need.
Yeah.
The other thing I think you mentioned was, I mean, I think that's probably the big thing is just that, like, you're just tired at the end of the day, and it's so nice to just have that already thought out, already made, and you don't have to think about it. You just put it all together, or you have it ready, and you just heat it up, and you're done, and you got your fuel, and then you can like take some time in the evening to relax. You're not spending an hour cooking and then having to like immediately go to bed, which kind of sucks. So it gives you a little bit more time to maybe just do some other things that aren't related to work or training that you can kind of, yes, do other things besides cooking and training and work and all those types of things. So I think that's really kind of the biggest thing that, you know, we're wanting to like, I don't know, like point out and make sure people, I think most people can agree, like, yeah, that's not fun. I want to be better at meal planning. I want to be better at prep. And so that's kind of what we want to talk about today is just some thoughts, some tips around that, like how to do it, some different steps or ways to meal prep and plan ahead, some tips, or I hate the word hacks, but some tips and hacks on that you can consider when you're thinking about how to do that. So let's kind of dive right into that
Yeah.
if that works. Um,
Absolutely. I'm ready. Yeah, this is good.
yeah, so let's go. So I think like the first step to meal planning is to like, this is kind of how I do it, and I think it works well. Um, so it kind of depends on how you're doing it. Like with you, Justin, you like there's a meal plan and you're sort of prepping a lot of it together on Sunday. And so it's all sort of ready for the week. But the way I do it is like I do a mixture of like bulk cooking for some days. And then I also do some days where maybe I do have time to cook or I have time to make an easy meal. So it's some kind of combination of both. And so the way I suggest doing it, if either if you're going to bake everything ahead on Sunday, this is maybe less important because every day will kind of be similar. But if you want to do a little bit of a combination of bulk and like cooking, like to look at your schedule for the week and say, okay, like maybe like for me, like Monday, I didn't have a lot going on. My son is home with me. Like I might have a little more time to make something quick or easy or just kind of cook something for dinner. But then tonight, because I have that double threshold, like I'm actually cooking something right now in the crock pot. Like I put it all in together in the crock pot. It's going to be like I might have a few more ingredients to add, but hopefully when I'm done with my second run, it's pretty much ready to go. It's a chili chicken, like a chicken dish that I put in there. And then, so it's kind of looking through the week. Like, what does my schedule look like? What days do I absolutely not have time to do any prep? Like, even put something in the crock pot? What days do I have time to do a little bit of prep, or could I prep ahead? What days do I have time to cook? And kind of think about your schedule as a whole for the week and kind of plan your meals around that. And then what I do is actually create like a meal plan for myself in a way. And it doesn't have to be like the plans I sometimes create for people, like with Justin, it is like all in a nice document, or it's kind of planned out. But you don't have to be like, it doesn't have to be like that. If it's like, wow, that's a lot of effort. Like sometimes when I'm planning, I just take a piece of paper and write down like Monday is this, Tuesday this, kind of what I'm planning on each night. I'll ask my family if they have any input, which usually they're not super helpful, but I do. I'm like, is there anything you want this week? Kind of plan it all out. Think about, okay, what sounds good? Maybe do I want to try a new recipe? Like I try to sometimes try something new every once in a while. What am I going to bulk plan? What am I going to bulk cook maybe on Sunday? And just kind of think about the week. And then sometimes I even put it in my Google document, like every night, what we're eating for dinner, just because I'm go a lot by my calendar. But I just kind of plan ahead, and then I kind of think, okay, once I've got that set, I think, what about lunches? Like, am I going to do leftovers? Am I going to do some bulk cooking? What am I going to have for lunch? Because that's, like I said, is one of my biggest struggles. Is like I'm good at dinners. I'm not always good at like planning other parts of my day, like snacks and lunch, and that gets me into trouble. And I'm usually good about breakfast because we have a lot of the same things for breakfast, which is usually true for most people. Like breakfast, if usually most people have like a rotation of 3 or 4 things that they might eat. But just kind of thinking like, what do you need? And then kind of, so yeah, almost like even putting in, okay, I'm going to have leftovers, like this leftover in these days. I'm going to make some shredded chicken on the weekend and we'll do it in this meal. And then I'm going to have that for lunch, and just kind of thinking about what you're going to have. But it doesn't have to be like in a document in some kind of really fancy meal prep app or something. You could just literally write it down on a piece of paper, just so you kind of know and think about it. And then and then of course you have to kind of plan out your grocery list based off of that. But I do think if you have some like bulk options, and then maybe some like quick recipes that you just have to, that are some go-to recipes. I mean, it literally could be something so easy as like taco night or like spaghetti night. You don't have to overthink it. It doesn't have to be a super fancy meal every time. Like it's okay if it's something pretty easy. That's the other thing. I think people get caught up like, oh, I've got to have a new recipe every day, and I've got to make this super fancy meal all the time. And it's just like, that's that's just going to make you frustrated and stressed out. So I think it's just kind of coming together with what you're going to eat, sitting down, planning it out. And then the step 2 would be then kind of going and planning your grocery list, and putting in what you're going to, the things you generally just need anyways. And hopefully you're like I do, write things down as I run out of stuff too. So I might have like a running list going, and then I'm just adding things in based off of my meal plan, or what I've kind of planned for the week. And then, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I actually do everything where I actually have the groceries delivered to my house. So I have an app that throughout the week I'm adding items to, and then I'll go through and I'll put all my groceries in the app, and then order the groceries, and they're delivered to my house. So I can even take that step of going to the grocery store out, and that saves me a ton of time. We'll talk about that in some of those like time saving tips. But and then I think we'll talk about the batch cooking. Is there anything else like you're thinking within those steps, Justin, that I didn't mention, or you want to mention that you do, or anything with that?
I think one of the pieces that I've learned over the years is just the simpler, the better, and
Mm-hmm.
that goes for meals as well. There was a time period where I tried like one of those meal delivery services, and I'm not going to mention what their name is, on open air, but it was like once I decided to get rid of them, it was like a bad girlfriend that would just not go away. I kept constantly getting messages and mail and everything else from this company, but um, I found that the meals that they were delivering were what I would call kind of like sophisticated meals, and they're just like, oh yeah, it's 5 minutes of prep, but I mean, you're having to cut everything, there was a sauce that came with like every single meal. And I found that it actually it made me more stressed making the meal. The only benefit that I got out of it was I had the groceries delivered to my house, and they were like in like little individual bags. So that's the way that it worked. But to me, it was more complicated, and it
Mhm.
felt too sophisticated. I'm a very simple eater. The simpler, the better. I live with a crock pot. We have actually two crock pots, and that's part of our Sunday meal prep. Is like we'll make our dinners in the crock pot, and we have both of them going. So we'll make a big batch because there can be 2 to 3 of us in the home in any given week. So we have two crock pots because you're effectively cooking 10 servings at a minimum for the entire week. And I'm lucky enough to have a wife that doesn't mind kind of like eating the same stuff all the time. She may not eat it, so there might be a serving left over here and there, but that's fine. But it's available there, and she doesn't mind it. And then if we don't eat everything, she ends up taking some of it for her lunches like the following week. But yeah, the simpler, the better. Chilies, different kinds of soups. Um, you know, I have struggled cooking chicken in the crock pot. I still haven't quite mastered that because
Mhm.
every time I cook it, it comes out dry, even though it's like, you
Hmm.
know, in a sauce or whatever. It's like if you're making like this week we have the chicken parmesan pasta, and it's the second time that we've had it. So we make the chicken parm in the crock pot, but the chicken and we cook it on low for like the 6 hours, and it comes out really kind of like challenging to eat. It's like even though it's cooked in the sauce, it's still like the chicken is still a little dry.
Hmm.
So I'm not quite sure if I've quite
Not mastered that. Yeah.
figured out that method yet. Maybe it's worth it to like, if you're gonna have chicken recipes, cook it on the high setting so that it cooks for a shorter amount of time,
That's what I'm
rather
thinking.
than allowing it to cook for like the whole like 6 to 6 hours or 8 hours or however
Right.
long you cook it. But
That might be it too, is just
yeah,
overcooking it. Yeah, I do a lot of like shredded chicken. So it's like I'll do a bunch of broth and then shred in the chicken, and then I'll do like onion and garlic seasoning. So it can be kind of used for many different things. And then I'll leave. Yeah, I do. I do it till it shreds. So shredded chicken's usually pretty. Um, you know, I mean, it's pretty moist, but I mean, it doesn't
yeah,
get too dry. But I suppose if you're just cooking the chicken breast, it could if it's overcooked or their sauce starts to kind of dry out. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, maybe just trying like a higher setting for less time instead of having to be in there for 6 hours. Do it on a high for like 2 or 3. See if
yeah,
that you know does it. But yeah, chicken in general is kind of a challenging thing to kind of prep because it can be kind of dry. So you have to, like, and I do chicken sometimes in the air fryer, and I'll add broth to the air fryer, and so it kind of steams it a little more. So it's a little, and then you do have to be kind of careful about the time. You obviously want to cook it enough so it's not undercooked, but you also don't want to overcook chicken. So that is a challenging. But that's what I do is when I cook chicken, I do it often in the air fryer, and I'll just add a layer of chicken broth, and it kind of keeps it moist because it adds that it almost steams it a little bit more, so it's not just like dry. Yeah, there's little like hacks you can use for chicken, but yeah, I think it's like the good the for you like you're like I said like you're kind of making everything in large batches on the weekend and having it for the week, so that's definitely a great way to go. I think that works really well, for people who do not mind having the same thing. And you really don't, you take like during the week when you're busy, you take all of the guesswork or thought out of it completely. It's just ready to go, which is so nice. When you get to the end of the day and you're like, okay, just have to heat this up and I'm good to go. But we'll talk a little bit about that too, because I think for some people, they're like, I just can't have the same thing every day. And so there's some ways around that. Uh, I think too, like kind of getting into the tips and tricks. I wanted to mention this because I've had a few people point this out to me, and I've tried it a little bit myself. Is that AI, as much as I know people have some polarizing opinions on artificial intelligence and that whole thing. But I've had a few clients that have tried like chat GPT and putting in make me a meal plan, and it like basically saying their parameters for it. And sometimes it'll spit out a pretty good meal plan. So they might put in like, I don't know, sometimes they'll even put in like some parameters around their macronutrient goals and if they want to be gluten free or whatever it is, and it'll spit out a meal plan. And it's basic. It's not really that complicated, and oftentimes there are no recipes that come with it, so you maybe just get some basic things. But that could be a starting point if you're just like, I don't know what I'm going to make this week, like I don't even want to think about it, it's just too much for me to think or look through recipes or whatever, you're just overwhelmed. Like maybe just see what chat gpt can put together for you, and it might even prompt you to think, okay, now I've got at least some ideas, a starting point, and then you can find some recipes or something. So that is an interesting tool that I think a lot of people maybe aren't using that you could try out. There's also a lot of like meal prepping apps, like Paprika or Eat This Much. I think the problem is like not a lot of those are really tailored for athletes. So it's like it's like a starting point. You almost like, okay, I'm going to kind of generate a meal plan. And then you have to kind of have the ability and knowledge to know when you need to add something to a meal or how to have more portions or something. But there's like a lot of meal prep planning tools and apps out there that you can use. And if you find one you like, it does make it a lot easier, at least to generate ideas. Sometimes I'll go in and use some of those tools just to get an idea. Like, oh, well, oh, that's neat. I never think about that. Like, oh, that sounds good. And then it'll give me some, yeah, just something new to try or something different to try. And you can put in there like quick, easy recipes. Like they have all sorts of filters. So just thinking about making your life easy with some of those tools that either generate meal plans or AI, um, can be a great way to go, especially if you're just wanting to come up with like ideas for meals. Um, I don't know if you used any. I mean, there are such, I didn't really look into it much. There's like the Fuelin app, I think is for endurance athletes, but from what I gather on that, it's just kind of giving you an idea of what macros to eat. I don't know if it gives actual meal ideas. So do you know of any, Justin, that are just specific to athletes? Have you run into any?
I don't. I mean, no,
Yeah,
I've never uh, used an app, in order
yeah,
to manage a meal plan. Um,
right. Yeah.
I always just kind of thought it's like, okay, well, I know that I want protein and I know I want carbs. So what kind of meals do I have in my own library of meals that I could make? I'm not I hate following a recipe because I'm so A type personality that if it calls for like 2 1/3 pounds of chicken, I'm like slicing the raw chicken until it gets to like the 1/3 pound rather than just say, let's go with 2.5 or 3. Just throw it in there and be fine with it. No, it has to be the 2 1/3 pound. I'm learning to be a
See,
little
that's
bit more
funny because I'm
flexible.
like type A too, but that's where I diverge. I'm like,
Oh
screw
man,
this thing. And
it's
I'm
really
like,
bad.
so I don't ever follow a recipe. I just kind of use recipes as like and this is probably because I do have like a long history. I've never gone to culinary school, but as a dietitian, I obviously like food and cooking a lot. I've cooked since I was in high school for my mom, and I've just always like enjoyed cooking. So I've kind of got this point where I'm like, like, or if I don't have something, I know what else I can use, or it's just kind of like really just like throwing things
Yeah.
together. And sometimes I use the recipe only as a guide point. It's like, oh, this is kind of guiding me in the right direction, but I'll just throw in things. It's like,
Yeah, I'm very much a let's throw it in the pot and see how it turns out kind of cooker. Um, I think my issue is, and it stems from childhood. It's like I just hated vegetables, and it was probably the reason why I eventually needed gastric bypass because I'm just poor at decision making. But you know, I was really bad at trying to get in vegetables, so I would develop meals that would allow me to get the vegetables without like purposefully eating vegetables, you know? So
Mhm.
I would make like my spaghetti sauce turns out to where, if you just go and make a normal spaghetti sauce, it's kind of like you throw in some meat and you put it in the sauce and you just cook it. Mine is off the chain. I use like a whole bag of like spinach. I'll throw that in there. I'll cut up carrots, throw the carrots in there, broccoli, onions, green and red peppers. I put in zucchini, all kinds of like vegetables. So that it's a chunky kind of pasta sauce. But it allowed me to get my vegetable intake without like realizing sitting there on my plate looking at the vegetables that I was going to like forcibly, make myself eat because I didn't want to eat it because, I'm a big baby. And so I would put it I would put it in food that I didn't realize, oh, I'm really eating, this handful of carrots and I'm getting, all these benefits from all the vegetables that I'm eating.
Yeah,
So
you're like sneaking them in. Like I tell
I
parents
am.
to eaters to do that.
I'm a sneaky foodie. So
That works though. I mean, there's like that's one way to do it, you know. I think people who say they don't like veggies is like, well, there's sneak them in there, get them in, like throw them in the sauces and blenderize them or
yeah,
something into
I think
something.
that was the hardest part of like trying to get into meal prepping was and us working together is kind of the loss of creativity that I would have in the kitchen,
Mhm,
because it's very difficult for me to turn over that control to you to provide the menu and the recipes and everything else because I'm a big control freak. So that it's been good for me, in
mhm,
that regards, is having the plan, you helping me figure out what I should be eating, getting me to try new foods that, I wouldn't have tried, otherwise say, oh, I'll give it a shot. I trust Katie. It's like, but at the end of the week, I'm like, yeah, we're not putting that in the menu ever again. So
yeah, and I
I
mean, you
tried
can
it. I
learn
gave it the
something
benefit of the
too.
doubt, but I'm good.
But there are also things I think you're like, oh, that's, pretty good. I think that's the thing is like sometimes giving that control over and being open to trying something um, different that you haven't tried or cooking in a different way. Like you're either going to like it or you're not. But if you like it, then you've kind of increased your variety of things that you like and your palate a little bit. And so sometimes having someone create a plan, but then having that I always tell my clients, I'm like, just honest, be honest with me. If you don't like something, I'm not gonna be offended. I know not everybody likes every food. Everyone has different tastes. And so if you do end up hiring someone to kind of create a plan or something, just the honesty is helpful because then I'm like, okay, we won't make that one again, or we'll try veggies in a different way, or there's just certain veggies you're just like, okay, this I really just don't like these vegetables, and that's okay because oftentimes there's at least a good handful of veggies that people like. And so sometimes it's just trying to get out of your comfort zone and trying new things, but also like sticking to the veggies mostly that people enjoy. And that's okay. As long as people are getting those veggies in there, somehow.
Yeah.
So, but that's the other thing. If you're like, well, I can't really hire someone to do a plan, like maybe trying something where they create one for you and then being open to trying the recipes that are generated, even if you're not so sure because maybe it works out really well and you're like this is amazing or it doesn't but at least you tried something new because I think that's important to be open to trying veggies. And I think the other thing like you mentioned because so many people I work with or there's a lot of people I work with who don't like vegetables and I think it does probably stem from childhood. Either parents didn't have a lot of vegetables, available. And so there was an exposure to it, or the vegetables were cooked in a very bland or overcooked way. So I don't want to blame parents in their fifth, like the fifth from the 50s, 60s, 70s, but I think there was a lot of like cooking or even, my mom, I think she did a pretty good job, but there was a lot of like overcooking veggies, over steaming, not seasoning them. They're just bland, like, yeah, veggies aren't fantastic like when they're just bland and overcooked, but if you roast them and add flavor and add maybe spice them up a little bit they can be really good or add them into something so you're kind of hiding them. And being able to try vegetables prepared in different ways and being open-minded to that, I think, is a big piece of this too, because a big part, thinking about food, we have the macronutrients, the proteins, the carbs, the fats. Those are really important. Those get talked about a lot, but we have micronutrients that we need as well. And those veggies, I think the carnivore people would probably like to argue against vegetables, but I say that research is pretty plentiful in the fact that the vegetables have a lot of fiber, a lot of micronutrients that are really beneficial to our health, and antioxidants and things that are going to really help us, especially athletes, be able to kind of recover, stay healthy, keep our immune system healthy, keep our gut health healthy. So that's just really important that we include those in there, and fruits to an extent as well. And then obviously there's other sources of fiber, but I'm trying to find ways to add, fruits and veggies, and not just kind of thinking about just the macros, but thinking about those other components of our diet that are going to be really helpful in terms of our overall health. So, being open-minded and not just kind of sticking to, rice and chicken. I'm just going to eat rice and chicken. I feel like that's probably more so like the bodybuilding community. They're like, I'm just going to keep it, they just want their protein, and they're not thinking about as much the other things. They're just trying to keep it to their macro goals. And sometimes I think that can be to our detriment a little bit if that's all we're focusing on. Let's look at some of the other tips. So I think the other thing, so you mentioned the meal prepping service, like the actual, like they sent you the kits and you made it yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like I agree. I've never tried one, but that's what a lot of people tell me. They're like, we get this, and it's like all this, it's like all this work, like it's all there for you, but you still have to chop everything. And it's like a lot of work. One thing you can think of if you have the budget for this, because this is not cheap, is like actually like a meal plan, like a meal prep service that just already makes the meals for you. So locally we have one, and I'm not going to name it, but it's like local to our area. That's like, he preps all the meals, and it's like you can go pick them up and they're already made for you. And so the only thing is they're all sort of generic, meaning like the portions are all the same. So you might have to find other ways to get more carbs or protein if it wasn't enough for you, but it's all made, and you just go through every week, and I believe you pick the meals you want. He makes them all, or through his business, and then you go pick them up and you have meals. So that's an option. Let's say for me, I've thought about this, although I'm not going to be doing it anytime soon, just because of the budget of it and trying to, it's just expensive. But my lunch issue, like maybe I could have like 5 days worth of lunches prepped for me. That would make my life a little easier if I just wasn't willing or having the time to do that. So that's one tip, is if you want to, like, looking into local, there's like factor meals and other things that people like, are just like, because sometimes they're made far away and then sent to you frozen, and it's not very fresh. But if you can look for like a local place that does that, and maybe even if they cater a little bit to athletes or have different options for macros, like you can decide, what you want, then that would be an option, right? So that's a tip. But I agree with you, Justin, those like the ones that send you the kits that you make, like I think that's really great for people who have a little more time, that really love to meal prep and have that time at the end of the day. Like, I could see myself doing that maybe when I'm retired. I'm like, oh, let's send me the thing. I'm just going to do it. Right. I have like an hour. I'm going to drink a glass of wine or whatever. Maybe not, but something like that, I have a little extra time. I'm like, that's what I've been picturing when I'm retired. I don't know if that's going to be the way it is, but
I don't have the time to cook every single day, which is
yeah.
what these kits would require you to do. Is like, you're cooking every single day. And to me, it's like, I don't enjoy cooking enough to want to do that. I know that there are some people that truly get joy out of like being in the kitchen and
Mhm.
cooking. I'm not one of
Yeah,
those
I
people.
do, but not every day when I'm busy. Like, I love cooking, but I love cooking when I have time to do it. When I'm in a time crunch and I'm already tired, it sucks. So, yeah. So maybe that, if you love cooking and you have the time, go check out one of those services. But And because they just send it all to you. It's all ready to go. You don't have to, you know,
Yep.
worry about all the prep and planning. And, it's, I mean, you have to prep it all, but it's all sent exactly as it is. And all you have to do is cook it. Or just buy the meal, or look into a local meal prep delivery where they just make all the meals for you. And if you have the budget for that, like that works really well for a lot of people. But if you don't, then that's probably neither of those options are going to work. I think the biggest thing too is like I was saying, the grocery shopping is time consuming. For me, I live in the country. I'm like 20 to 25 minutes away from the grocery store. Like especially now when I've been marathon running, like on my usually my grocery shopping would be done on like a Sunday because Saturdays are just busy with family stuff, right? And so I run a 20-mile run. Like, I'm sorry, like, I do not want to go to the grocery store. I don't. It sucks to have to do that. On top of that, I just kind of want to chill. I want to maybe like be with my son and not really have too much planned. So I just have my groceries delivered. Like I said, I have an app. I live where there's like a King Supers or Kroger. They have a really pretty easy to use app. I put all my stuff on there. Like everything I need. And I've used it so much, I've kind of got the hang of it. It takes a little bit to get the hang of it because you have to know, like, oh, I can't, if I order a banana, it's just one banana, not like a pound of bananas, So sometimes I've ordered stuff and I'm like, oops, it only sent me one apple. I didn't realize it was like just one and not a pound. So you have to kind of like figure this stuff out on there. But man, does that save me time. Like the other week, I got home from my run and my groceries were delivered like an hour later. They come right to my door. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the produce has been an issue, but really, honestly, they've done a really good job with that mostly. Like they pick out pretty good produce. Sometimes I have substitutes or things that they don't have available. That kind of sucks if that's a main ingredient, but most of the time it actually works out really well. And I don't have to go to the grocery store. So it just comes, it's like pretty cheap. I think it was like an annual membership, and I can get groceries delivered as many days as I need. I can have them deliver groceries every day if I wanted. I just wanted them. Like I think some people may do that too. They kind of like, oh, this is what I'm having today, and they just have it delivered. It sounds like, from the guy who delivers it, that people do that. So that is an option, or just pick up, like have them. If you have the ability, if you don't have the ability to do that, but you have the ability to go pick up the groceries, that's an option. But if, I think that just makes life easier. That's something I do. But the other option is making sure when you do create a grocery list, like make it organized a little bit so you don't have like all this jumbled up stuff and you're spending 3 hours at the well, this is an exaggeration, but 3 hours at the grocery store because you have the meat section and then you're going over to the other side because you have you know what I mean, and you're like,
Yeah.
nothing's organized. Like try to organize it based off section of the grocery store, like produce, if every grocery store is kind of laid out a little different, but like usually it's like produce and dairy and like the meat section and the bread and then the center aisles, and you can kind of organize it based off of that so that you just are kind of you get what you need, you're going through each aisle, you're not jumping all around the grocery store trying to find stuff and then you're out, to make it more time efficient, right? So that's some of my tips. I don't know if you have any other thoughts, like when you're shopping, anything that you'd want to add to that, Justin.
When I would put together my grocery list, I have a little Alexa Echo device
Mm.
that sits on my counter. That probably spies on me now. But I would sit there in front of my refrigerator in my cabinet, and I would just tell Alexa what to add to my grocery list. So I would have staples in there, and it's like if I use the last item on something, as soon as I open it up, I was like, "Hey, Alexa, add this to my shopping list," and she adds it. And then if I sit there with the menu and I say, "Okay, I'm looking at my cabinets and I'm looking in the refrigerator," it's like, "Okay, I don't have this," so I'm speaking it out, and she's putting it in there. The Alexa app will organize it for you by group, and so then you can just and it's shareable. So if there's multiple people in the house, you can all share the Alexa app. You just have the login information. And so, if I need to add something and my wife is the one that's going to do the grocery shopping, she says, put it on the Alexa app. And then all she gets it, she can look it up on her phone. So she has access to it. I have access to it. And so I think that if there's multiple people within the house that are managing a single grocery list, having some kind of technology like that that makes it easily shareable is a huge benefit.
Mhm. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good tip because I don't. We have like old school, like a thing on the fridge that has we have like a marker, like a dry erase, and so sometimes I'll be like tell my husband if anything runs out because he honestly like he's the one that's a little bit low tech. He doesn't even have like Facebook. And so, not that that's like it's probably a good thing. I kind of envy him in a way. He'll write down what we need if something's running out, so that because I'm kind of the like I guess just taking on that role because that's what I'm good at is like meat cooking and things like that. So I'll just add that to the list, and so you can be old school too, but I like that idea because then everybody has access. So if you're not the one going shopping, you don't have to like oh wait, here's my paper my
Yeah.
paper list of things we need, and then that gets lost somewhere, which has definitely happened to me. Or I forget it, and it's like to have, or I'll take a photo of it on my phone. But that's great. Yeah, that's a great tip. So I don't have Alexa, but if you have that, and there must. It sounds like there's like a whole app or something
Yeah,
available.
there's the device that sits on your counter, and then you can have the Alexa app that sits on your phone. And
Okay.
so you just speak it out and just say, hey, add this, this, and this to my
Grocery list.
shopping list. She'll put it in
Awesome.
there, and then you just open up the app. You're just like, you can check it off. So if you have that type of personality where you like to cross things off of a list and stuff, you can check it and it disappears and it goes down into the bottom of the list. It's really
Oh,
satisfying.
that's
As
nice.
you go through the grocery store, things are
Well, thank you.
disappearing.
I used to have my old like paper list and a pen, and I'd be like, "Yep,
Yep.
that's
Oh,
well, that's nice." See, I'm like maybe like a little lower tech. I guess I'm just like paranoid that it's listening to my conversations. Which you
oh
know
yeah,
what, my phone's probably
absolutely.
doing the same thing, and I have it sending
Yep.
everything. I don't know why I'm paranoid because it's already happening. So I'm just kidding. But that's a great tip. Like, I think it's just like, yeah, those little things that just make our lives easier. So you don't, yeah, especially something like that where it's like already putting it into a category for you. You don't even have to think about it. That's
Yep.
so much easier. And so I think, yeah, I think utilizing those types of apps, and I'm sure there are other apps. If you don't have Alexa or whatever, you can find that kind of do that for you as well online. I just don't know of any on the top of my head, but sometimes those meal planning apps too, they do create like grocery lists if you just decide you're going to use everything on there, or you could kind of use some of what's on there or whatever, but they do sometimes create lists for you, so that makes it a little bit easier. The other thing I wanted to mention, just another tip, is like it's totally okay to use convenience items. So I think people think, oh, I've got to like prep everything. Everything has to be like I'm going to buy it all and chop it all up and prep it. But we're busy. It's if you can use like I use a combination of like sometimes convenience items or pre-prepped items or things that are just easy, and I use a combination of things that I maybe like chop up and prep. So it's like a combination of both. But I'm thinking like pre-chopped veggies, pre-cut up veggies, like pre-washed spring mixes that you can make salads. Fruit sometimes that's already chopped up can be really easy if you have a tendency to not eat the fruit and it goes bad, or you don't. You're much more likely to eat a vegetable if it's already pre-cooked or pre-chopped or frozen or something easy like that. Like it's fine. Like use that like rotisserie chicken, shredded cheese kind of falls into that category. So you don't have to sit there like I have with the whole chunk of cheese and you're like shredding it and
Yep.
it's taking like 30 minutes and making your arms really tired. I think even like cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, sometimes there's even those like meal kits. I think of like Kevin, like the Kevin's brand is one I've used. It's
Mhm.
like a meal kit thing. It just comes with chicken and it's just maybe the protein piece, but I'll buy those sometimes and have them in my freezer for like when I'm really like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes we even do. I mean, I'll be completely honest. My son, he's 5. He loves chicken nuggets, and there has been nights that we've made chicken nuggets and like maybe a vegetable and something else, but that's what we're having because I'm just like,
Yeah.
fine. I'm not going to make him a meal. He really wants chicken nuggets. That's what we're having. That's what, kids like. So we do, sometimes fish sticks too. So don't be, don't be like that doesn't mean you're like bad parent or something because you make something that's like, oh, maybe not like the healthiest thing, but it's something and it's got protein and I try to find the healthier version. So don't think, oh, I'm gonna have these, I've got to make everything from scratch. I think that's the other thing that Instagram doesn't do very well. I mean, in terms of like the pressure, like, you have people on there, oh, I made my own yogurt, like, oh, I made my own sourdough bread and I'm making all this, like, okay, fine. I love that you have the time and the ability to make all your own yogurt and all your own sourdough bread and all this fancy stuff. Like, great. That's lovely. I don't have that time. And frankly, like, even if I had the time, like, maybe that's not what I want to spend my time doing. So great. I'm gonna go ahead and buy I'm gonna buy this stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe someday I'll find the motivation to make my own yogurt, but right now I just don't. So I'm not saying if you love to do that and that's something that your hobby is, that's great. But the pressure, I think, is that people think, oh, I've got to do all these things from scratch, and there's like a pressure for that. I think that's kind of where it becomes more problematic, especially if that's not something you enjoy doing. So yeah, it's okay if you have to buy it. Any
I
thoughts
think we
on that?
want one thing I do want to make the distinction with is, you know, the incorporation of convenience items into your menu
Mhm.
in terms of quality. It's the definition of what a convenience item is. You know,
Mhm.
for instance, I once I discovered that you could buy the whole rotisserie chicken and I didn't have to cook a chicken, and so then all I had to do is just pluck all the meat off of it and put it in a Tupperware container and throw it in there, and then all of a sudden I've got pulled chicken that I can use in all kinds of different recipes, and all I had to do was buy one $5 chicken. Perfect. I loved it. It was great. But there's a difference between prepackaged foods that are not nutrient dense
Yeah,
and
like
convenience items.
processed.
So
Mhm.
I want to make that distinction between
Right.
convenience and processed food, I guess
Mhm.
is
Like
the proper
crackers, like
terminology for it. Yes. So
Cheetos, like
it,
those are
let's make sure that we make that distinction is that we're not talking about saving time by using more processed foods, because I
Mhm.
think that you're kind of defeating the purpose a little bit on, trying to fuel for
Right.
workouts by fueling it with pre-processed foods, which usually comes with a bunch of additives and salts and
Mhm.
everything else that you don't necessarily need or want to use to fuel your body. But
Right.
it is okay to use convenience items, like pre-cut, like you're saying, pre-cut vegetables, rotisserie chickens, things like that,
Your
that are
pre-cooked
still whole
hard-boiled
foods,
eggs, yeah.
but a lot of the work has already been done for you.
Right.
It's not the same as a processed food. So,
Right, or even like deli, I like sometimes in the deli, they have pre-cooked salmon and
mhm,
different salads, like, sometimes there's actually fairly healthy things in the deli section, depending on where you go. I mean, I know Whole Foods has a lot of healthier things, but that's more expensive. But even at the local grocery store, I found like pre-cooked salmon fillets that you could just bring home, and there's things I found there that I've been surprised that were pre-cooked or pre-prepped, but they're healthy. They're just easy. And then like I think of somebody in the East Coast who goes to like a Wegmans, or I think that's what they have, like a lot of pre-prep things, and some of the things they've had, or they've mentioned that they have there are actually are probably quite good, in terms of their nutrient, what they have available, and the protein and carbs and veggies. So it's like, okay, there may be options like that, that you can just go to the store and get, that are sort of pre-made, that of course are more expensive, but that's always an option if you're really in a bind, or you want to have something for a night you just don't have time to cook. So yes, that's the different, not like, oh, I'm going to go grab this ultra processed bag of Cheetos, and that's not at all what we're talking about. Yeah, it's the pre-prep things that are kind of pre-made, and that maybe have a little bit of a cost to them because they're already chopped or kind of pre-cut up, or yeah, like yogurt, it's just in a container. And yeah, you can make your own, but it's like, I buy the big containers of Greek yogurt, and that's what I use. But Just things like that are kind of add protein, add nutrient quality that are just easy to grab. So yeah, I think that's a good distinction to make. Because I think sometimes people get confused. Even the term process can be kind of confusing, because if you look up the definition, it's anything that's kind of processed. Could be even anything cut up could be considered somewhat processed,
Yeah.
because so it gets a little confusing. But I think that's a good distinction to make. And I also want to mention, of course, I think most people understand this, but that budget piece of like coupons, like, if I know it takes time to look for coupons. The nice thing about the app I use with that, it's kind of cool with the delivery of the food. They actually have the ability for me to look at what coupons are available and the flyer within the app, so I can see what's on sale. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll look on what's on sale or what the specials are, and I'll base my menu a little bit off of that if I'm having a week that I need to kind of stay in a specific budget. So even just like using some of those membership cards, just making sure by sales, if you find a really good deal on like salmon, let's say it's a really nice deal, or chicken or something like that, like buying a bunch of it and putting some of it in your
Yeah.
freezer. So just thinking, okay, yeah, it's going to cost a little now, but this is the next few weeks I have this particular protein item that's discounted that I can use, and that'll save me money later. So things like that, I think, just kind of remembering that those options are available for you if you need to be on a budget. Because not everybody has the same amount of budget for food. So just kind of keep taking advantage of those things. And so, any other thoughts? I mean, I think we can move to we're already at about an hour. I want to make sure we don't go too over. Like, I wanted to mention some examples of like how to put together
Yeah.
like a plan, but do you have any other thoughts on the tips or anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I know that we have Costco and Sam's Club memberships, so it's like the big buy in bulk kind of stuff. Um, Not everything that you get there is going to be a great deal, but there are some things that we ended up getting a small deep freezer to add because we were filling up like our normal freezer. So if you have the ability to have like a deep freezer like that, you can take advantage of good sales at these big box retailers. When they have, especially their meats on sale, and things like that, and buying a little bit more and just carrying an inventory at home of stuff that that you're going to commonly use. All kinds of like ground turkey, ground beef, chicken breast, chicken thighs, um, and chicken breasts, all kinds of different other stuff that you can carry yourself and have an inventory of when you find them on sale. I
Mhm.
think is the biggest money saver that way.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip too. Is if you have especially like a family where you can do
Yeah,
bulk items, and you kind of what you especially like at Costco, you kind of have to know like, well, what's a good deal. And some things I've gotten in the trouble of like, because this is just me and my husband and now my son, but it's like buying something in bulk and having it for like,
yeah,
like a snack item that we have now for like months. But um yeah, I think like just taking advantage of some of the if you have a big family, like of some of those deals and Costco and memberships, and like we have a membership card at King Supers that saves us money. So, and we get like cash back or it's like fuel points. Sometimes I get up to like $1 off on per gallon, I think, or something. Like it's like a pretty good deal when it comes down to it. So I save money on fuel, which isn't really related to meal planning, but it does come in handy when it comes to it kind of gives me a little bit of money back from fuel. So it works. So let's talk
I mean,
about like
even if you don't have a big family, you can still take advantage of like these, Sam's Club and Costco places because they'll allow you to share memberships without being in the same household.
that's true. Yeah.
So, if you have another friend or whatever, and you say, hey, would you like to go in on, a membership like that? Uh, that is something to consider if you don't want to like buy in bulk because you don't have a very large family, but you want to try to reap the benefits of buying in bulk, that's another option to consider, is
Hmm.
finding somebody to share the membership with you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because they do. I know we had at one point with my husband's dad, so he had us on his membership, and that worked really well because we could
Yeah.
kind of share that. So yeah, absolutely. Um, so let's talk about like some examples or just some ideas for like meal prepping for like a busy athlete schedule. And so this is an example of somebody who maybe doesn't like, because I think we brought up that, obviously you can find like a couple recipes, 2 or 3 recipes for the week and kind of plan and cook them all at once on the weekends. And that's kind of what Justin's doing. But this example is more for maybe somebody who is okay with leftovers sometimes, like they can have leftovers from dinner the day before, but they don't necessarily want to have the same thing every day. Like, so maybe they want a little more variety. So this kind of involves what I call bulk cooking method, and it's combined with some convenience options and maybe easy meals. So again, this is where you're sort of looking at your week and sort of deciding like what days do I need something that I can just pull out of the fridge and put together and maybe reheat, and what days do I have a little bit of time for prep, or what kind of that sort of looking ahead and looking at your schedule, and then picking out what you're going to do, and it's going to involve that meal prep on the weekend. And I call it power hour. So in this example, like sometimes if you have more to prep for the week, it does take a little more time and commitment because maybe because you're planning all the meals for the week, it's just going to be a little more intensive. Like Justin said, there's a lot going on in the kitchen, but if you just have a few bulk items that you're preparing for the week, you might have to kind of do it's a little bit of a choreography of like, okay, I'm going to put this in, I'm going to do this. And then you have to really, it's kind of busy. But if you do it that way, it can really be what I call like power hour. And so it may only take, if you're really good at this, like maybe an hour, or at least maybe some prep in the morning where you maybe have a crock pot thing, and then you're doing like an hour of like cooking later on where you really are just like in it and you're putting everything together, making sure you're prepping. And so it shouldn't hopefully take like 8 hours. You know what I mean? I think people think of meal planning and they think, oh, it's going to take me like all day Sunday, and it shouldn't take that much. So an example here is like in the morning, maybe putting 1 to 2 pounds of chicken in the crock pot and doing like, so you're putting in just enough broth to kind of cover the chicken, and you're doing, I do onion and garlic seasoning on there. I put it on for maybe like anywhere between 4 and 6 hours on low, and I let it go, like it's just cooking. So I'm making that's my shredded chicken. I'll make that, and then that's easy. Like that took me like maybe a minute of prep to get that going. And then I'm gonna do whatever I'm doing. I might go for my run, whatever, and then later on in the day, this is what I would suggest. So you want to maybe do like, I'm gonna give some examples here. 3 to 4 sweet potatoes. You cut them a little bit and then or stab them a bunch. Take a wet paper cloth or something and wrap them in like the wet cloth. Put them in the microwave, cook them for 6 to 10 minutes until they're soft. And then you have literally, that's like the sweet potatoes for the week. So the reason I have them in the wet rag is because otherwise they kind of dry out and get weird in the microwave. But that's just one. So you're going to have the sweet potatoes, and you have the chicken going, but the sweet potatoes are kind of cooking. And while those are cooking, you're cutting up some veggies and putting them on a pan. So this could be like whatever veggies you like. It could be broccoli, it could be Brussels sprouts, it could be carrots, it could be beets, but veggies that are maybe good for roasting, it could be cauliflower. You're putting it on a big roasting pan, a few different veggies, seasoning them, maybe some spray, avocado spray, season with some kind of like pre-made seasoning that's good for vegetables. You just season it on there, throw it in you maybe had the oven prepping, at 350 or whatever, it's already preheated. You throw it in there and you got that going for 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the vegetables you're roasting. So that's going. All right, you got the sweet potatoes that, then you're maybe going to cook some other kind of meat, or it could be like tofu if you're vegetarian, but then you're going to prep maybe another protein option. So A couple options here. I just kind of put like ground beef. Maybe you're just cooking up ground beef, like a big couple pounds of ground beef. Or if you're vegetarian, maybe you've got like some lentils you're throwing on and maybe some tofu you're throwing in the air fryer, and you're going to cook those up. Those are going to be your protein. But literally that's kind of it. Like maybe you're doing like some dozen of hard-boiled eggs or something like that. But this is all happening. Again, it's a lot happening, but you're using crock pot, you're using a few stove items, you're using the oven, you're using your air fryer. So you have a lot of things going on at once. It is a little bit of a choreography, but all of these should take no more than an hour. And then you have your shredded chicken that you've been making earlier. That's going to be done. You're going to shred that up. You're going to put all these items when they're done in a bulk, in big containers. They're all bulk, and you're going to put them in the fridge. Now, when you're also going to have, I got some convenience items such as whole grain tortillas, ready-made rice, that brown rice that comes in the ready-made container that you just put in the microwave. Then you don't have to make rice. That's an easy one. Canned beans, maybe salsa that you bought, canned tuna, or that honey baked smoked salmon. The kind that's it's not the smoked salmon that's thinly sliced, but it's like a whole fillet of salmon that's like cooked and smoked that you can buy. It's called honey baked salmon. I use that a lot. So those are just some convenience items you can have. And then maybe you have Greek yogurt, you have some nuts and seeds that you have available to make things with. And then you're making the following meals for the week. Breakfast might be Greek yogurt bowl with fruit, maybe a little granola or nuts. Maybe another day you have some hard-boiled eggs, or maybe if you don't like hard-boiled eggs, you cook some kind of egg dish or scrambled eggs, maybe toast with peanut butter. And then you have the smoked salmon. I do a lot, I do like bagels with smoked salmon. So I'll do that sometimes. So those are just 3 options for breakfast. Lunch might be like burrito bowls made with either the chicken, the beef, rice and beans, or if you're alternatively maybe a vegetarian, you could do it with some other sort of tofu option, but like a burrito bowl or a sweet potato, chop those sweet potatoes, chop them up, roasted veggies, maybe some of the protein that you've prepped, kind of topping it off with some kind of sauce. So you're making like a sweet potato veggie bowl. Those are just a couple options. And then maybe dinner, you have tacos with the ground beef or shredded chicken one night, shredded chicken soup. So you take some of that shredded chicken, you put it into a soup, a little bit of that rice, maybe some other kind of veggie, so a soup, ground beef Mediterranean bowls with maybe the beef, rice, tomato. You chop up with some tomato and cucumber real quick and make a Greek yogurt tzatziki sauce. Or you have that already made. You just buy it and it's all ready to go. But those are just examples. That was really quick because I want to make sure we have time, that, we don't go too over. But this is just, I know that's a lot, wow, that's a lot. But those are just example. You have all these easy things you can make throughout the week. And then maybe some of your other dinners, you're just making quick meals, pasta with ground beef and veggie sauce, something kind of easy to put together. A few other easy ideas would be like non-bread pizza, like those non-breads. You just make pizza with those. You just put the pasta sauce, cheese, veggies, meat, rotisserie chicken, like you mentioned, that's a good one that you can kind of use for a lot of things. Chicken soup in the crock pot. You kind of do like a chicken and broth. And then as you're going throughout the day, maybe you add veggies and some pasta or rice right at the end. So it's just cooked and ready to go right for you to eat. Grilled steak or meat or grilled tempeh or whatever, and veggies are pretty easy if you're good with the grill. And maybe just microwaving some sweet potatoes or doing some kind of air fryer potato thing, large salad where you just have a bunch of easy to pre-chop veggies and salad, and you just throw in all the bunch of stuff, make salad with garbanzo beans and the meat you have on hand. There's so much you can kind of do with it. There's just, once you have some of those bulk items and some of those convenience items, there's just so many different things you can kind of pair with that and kind of create with different seasonings and different sauces. You can make it almost like spicy, or you can have it be like the Greek with the tzatziki sauce and feta, or it could be, you could make it you could buy some kind of curry seasoning. There's just so many things, if you just have those basic items, you can kind of make it into different flavors and different options. And that's the thing that is great about doing it that way. So, yeah, those are my ideas. I mean, there's probably so many different things that you could go, different directions you could go with all of that, different, almost like, here's your bulk items, here's your convenience items, here's what you make. I could probably go on, but that just gives you kind of a starting point, I think, for how to kind of create that and make it pretty easy, because once you have all those items, all you have to do is put them together, really. You're looking at maybe like just reheating some things, maybe, kind of seasoning them again, or having a sauce that you put with it. You're looking at maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes of prep, maybe, but it's just mostly reheating. It's not like, or putting them in together. It's not a whole meal you have to create. You know what I mean? So yeah, those are my thoughts. anything you want to add? I
I
just went
think,
through that like really fast.
yeah, no, that was super helpful. I think 2 points that I want to say is that what you can do is if you come up with the protein that you want, you can find alternative carbs to put with it. So
Mhm.
if you have shredded chicken and that's your protein, one night you can, make some pasta, some spaghetti pasta, throw the shredded chicken in it, pour a little marinara sauce on it, sprinkle a little you know grated parmesan cheese, and there's an easy spaghetti night. The very next night you can use that same pulled chicken and maybe make a little rice with some frozen mixed vegetables that you've got in the freezer, and all of a sudden you have, kind of like a chicken stir fry that you can use. So it's like the chicken is the staple throughout all week that you can cook in bulk, but the carbohydrate can be easily substituted in and out so that you have different meals each day, but you can still reap the benefit of the bulk cooking from
Mhm.
earlier in the week. The second thing that I found helpful, and this is what works for me per se. So, what I do is I have my breakfast and lunches already portioned out for the most part. I have these little black, like little, food prep containers. And my breakfast, I make it in bulk. I portion it out, and I have 7 little containers that sit in my refrigerator because I know for me, and my personality and my tendencies, I'm coming home hungry, because my training takes part in the morning.
Mhm.
So I want something that all I have to do is reach inside the fridge, pull it out, throw it in the microwave if needed, and be done with it. I don't want to have to assemble stuff. I don't want to have to, pull out 4 containers and then take a little bit from this container, a little bit from that container. I like it already done. Grab one container, boom, done,
Ready,
go
yeah.
on my way. Lunches are basically the same way because sometimes, if I'm, working during the day, and I just want to and I work from home. So if I want to just walk into the fridge, grab the container, and, if I'm just adding a sauce or something to it, but the primary ingredients are already in the container. And then I add the sauce or a little bit of toppings or whatever. And then I can roll right back into my office and get back to work. So I like
Right.
to make things, if they're already portioned, it's a lot easier on me.
Yeah, I think that you
Some
can
people
kind
are
of
not the same way, but
do that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are sometimes when maybe at night, if you're making something for dinner and you're kind of like, oh, I've got, especially if you don't work from home and you've got to take something for lunch, like you might want to pre-portion, your lunch,
Mhm.
but it makes it a lot easier because you're just like, okay, what am I gonna have for lunch tomorrow? I'm gonna make myself like a grain, like a chicken grain bowl, or I'm gonna have a little bit of leftover from what we're having from dinner, and you portion it into a container, that you take with you. But it just makes it a lot easier because you're not sitting there like, well, what the heck am I gonna have for lunch tomorrow? Well, it doesn't, I don't have anything, and then I'm just gonna go out to eat, or whatever. And I think if you have it all available and you kind of think ahead, this just helps you. So you're not at that point where like, I'm so tired, like I don't have anything prepped, I don't have time to make a lunch. Like this just kind of helps. Like you can either do it like you do, kind of all prepped for the week, or if you don't want to do that, you can kind of think, okay, tomorrow I'm just going to put some things together for my lunch tomorrow. But if it's already all prepped for you, it makes it a little bit easier because it's just in the fridge. You just have to kind of put it together. So, um, it just kind of depends on, like the individual person and their schedule and their tendencies, like how they want to kind of go about, if they want to take all these bulk items and convenience items and pre-prep them into little containers, or if they want to just kind of like leave them bulk in the fridge and they take them out as they need them, and just make it. It really depends on that, individual piece, but at least you have it all made and it's ready, so you don't have that excuse of eating out. And I do want to mention too, like making sure you have snack things available. So I did mention, like, you could have snacks if you just, when you're making your grocery list, think of, well, okay, what snacks do I want to have? Because as athletes, we probably do need to eat a little more snacks than the average person population. You know what I mean? Like, so just having like that too, like, oh, fruit and cheese or hard-boiled eggs or whatever it is, like just thinking, okay, what's your day like? What's my training like? Maybe you make a smoothie or a shake, or you have some kind of snacks available too. So you kind of have all of that ready, things that you need on hand. So all you have to do is just grab them, or put them in your lunch box container for the work day or something, and they're just there and ready for you. So there isn't that much like that piece of like, oh no, I don't have anything ready. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have time to make something. It's all kind of there for you. So yeah,
One
I know
thing
I
I
have,
do want to, yeah, I
have to
want
have.
to tap into this, and hopefully it'll only take maybe just a couple, like 5 minutes or so, maybe less than that. But what we've spent the past hour and a half talking about is making our food and regimen as structured as possible to set us up for success. How do you plan, or how do you incorporate unstructured eating into our meal plans as well? Because if we think that we're just going to meal prep and we're going to eat those all the time and we're going to follow this to perfection, you're sadly mistaken, because
Mhm.
you're already kind of setting yourself up for failure, because we're interested in consistency, not perfection. So one of the things that I like working with you on is, you've said that Saturday evening is kind of like, I don't want to say it's my free meal, but it's my time to come off menu. And that
Mhm.
gives me an opportunity, like if I want to have a date night, with my wife, or if I've, had a hard day of long session and I want pizza that night, which is what typically happens. Um, you know, it's built into the meal plan. So building in a little flexibility into a structured meal plan is so very important
Mhm. Yeah,
in
absolutely.
order for the longevity and the
Yeah.
being able
Well,
to be consistent.
that's a really good point. I think, yeah, we didn't really mention that, but like I think that is absolutely true. Like some night, like for you, like it's built in on Saturday. That's kind of your like almost free meal. It's not a cheat meal because I do not like that word. It's a negative
Right.
connotation, but it's more of like there's no plan. You're kind of going out and having something you enjoy. I think that's perfectly fine within the planning to be able to, like, this is something I do. It's usually we go out to eat once a week. So I try to kind of plan that during the week. Sometimes I'll even plan it in during the work week, like on a Thursday. Like, we're going to go out. I'm just done by that point. Like, I don't even want to think about it. Like, I just don't want to make anything. That's the night we go out and maybe grab something to eat. And I think that's perfectly okay to have that planned in. But the thing is, like, you planned it in. It's not happening like 3 nights a week because you didn't plan ahead. It's happening
Right.
because you pre-planned it, and that is your night maybe to eat out and you're going to enjoy it. And that's okay. Yeah, it's not like you have to be perfectly planning everything out and everything has to be perfectly pre-prepped and you're not going out to eat at all, or there's never going to be an instance where you're like, I'm just, something comes up and totally throws you off your plan. Like, that happens, and I think it's okay to sometimes have to eat out or have to grab something quick. um, that happens, right? So there has to be some flexibility in the plan for that. And yeah, that's, I think, part of it. So even in your meal plan, maybe you're like, Monday through Wednesday, I'm doing this, and then Thursday is my night to eat out, or we're going to go out Friday night with friends, or whatever that is that's happening. That's perfectly great. And I think that is nice, because you're like, okay, I've got this. Like, I got to make it till Wednesday, and then we're going out Thursday, and I don't have to worry about it Thursday. And we're going to enjoy life, right? So, or just enjoy not, or going out to eat and enjoy something out. So that's perfectly true. And there's flexibility, I think, too, within the plan to allow for stuff like that to happen. It doesn't have to be rigid. I think having an idea of what you're going to do, and then sometimes I have an idea of what I'm going to prep, and then I'll totally switch it around, or something else will come up and I'll have to, whatever I was thinking I was going to have Tuesday, well, now we're going to have that Wednesday, and I'm going to have this, you know what I mean? It's not like set in any sort of stone or permanency. It's all flexible. So just knowing that, yeah, absolutely. I do have to run.
One of the things I do want to bring up real quick, though, is you and I did a special event where we were talking about weight loss for endurance athletes. And I think that this kind of ties into it, since we're talking about planning, trying to build in flexibility into the training plan or into the meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think keeping those free, quote unquote, free meals on the same day is probably it. I know that it works for me in particular, knowing that it's always going to be that Saturday. There's been a few occasions where it's changed to a different night, but I can count those on one hand in the span of like the past 12 months that we've been working together. But knowing that it's always going to be on that night helps me be consistent and not saying, oh, life got in the way today, so I'm going to make today my free plan, my free meal. And then, then you're forcing yourself to stay on plan for the rest of the week. And then all of a sudden something else is going to come up and you're just like, oh, I've already used my free day or my free meal. So now it turns into 2 free meals a week. And then for me, the wheels come off and you're off plan. So I think as you're getting used to meal planning and meal prepping, even if it's for like the first like 4 or 5 months, keep that free meal on the same night throughout that first time period as you get accustomed to meal planning and kind of eating off of a menu. Once you kind of get used to it, it kind of becomes old hat and you become experienced, then you might be able to inject a little bit more flexibility into it and allowing those meals to float around a little bit. But I think that in order to really be successful and to really formulate that habit, try and be as consistent as possible and don't allow a whole lot of changes to take place as your body adjusts and you form the new habit.
Yeah, I think that's a good, good thing is just like kind of, so you don't get to that point where you're making those excuses all the time. Like, oh, I'm just too tired, or, oh, and then it becomes, because you do have to kind of get the habit of it, right? And then once you kind of have that set, then you can be maybe able to be a little more flexible with it and not have it sort of totally derail your week where one night becomes 3 nights out, right? So absolutely. Well, I think we provide a lot of really hopefully helpful tips or thoughts for people. Maybe we can always have follow up with more meal ideas, or I might create a blog with more on the bulk cooking and more on this if people like to read about it or more examples of meals. But if you find it helpful, like, let us know. And anything else you want to add?
No, that's it.
Yeah, well,
I think this was a really good podcast. I think our listeners are going to have some good ideas to start on. If you do have any like follow up questions, you can feel free to email us, at our website, at the email address that'll be in the outro that we've got coming up. So thank you for joining us on this episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Again, this was episode 6 on meal planning and prep for athletes. Until next time, we thank you for listening. Listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to leave us up to a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify, because leaving a review really helps others like you find us. Visit the podcast website for other episodes of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast at enduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Send Coach Justin and Katie an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.